Hi there, and welcome to episode 1 of the Astrology with Heart podcast. As this is the launch episode, I'm going to take like 30 seconds to introduce myself and Heart Horizon Astrology so you get a bit of a sense of what these episodes will cover. All right, so I'm Christina, and I've been involved in some way with astrology since my teens. I know you'll be polite and not think of an actual age, but that is over 20 years. I trained with the evolutionary school in the USA, founded by Jeffrey Wolf Green, and spent time with starman Isaac George, who shared a wealth of astrology knowledge from his career in astrology over the years. I launched Heart Horizon Astrology in April 2023, and I cannot believe it has taken this long to share some really heart-centric insights in a podcast, but here we are. These podcasts are going to be psychological, and at times this might pull up something uncomfortable. Please, if you can, sit with it, if you can. Listening and noting is a brave step in any kind of healing. I support that journey in all of you. The soul of Heart Horizon is to be a kind of spiritual guide because we hold so much distress and pain and trauma in our bodies and our minds. Okay, so let's dive in today. I'm going to talk about the new moon, which is also a partial solar eclipse. It's in the sign of Virgo, and it's happening on the 21st of September. Now, I do have a blog post on it. There will be a blog post with every new and full moon. These are every 2 weeks, and the details will be below for you. But please note that as I live in the United Kingdom, so England, the chart information will be in British summertime or Greenwich Mean Time, so do adjust for your own location. So this new moon, well, I've penned it analysis paralysis. It's one of the key themes in Virgo, as it's known to be a very humble energy with a focus on critical analysis, discernment, and betterment within itself and also within society. It's ruled by Mercury. It's the inner feminine side. And so this means the mental function is heightened. Another key theme with Virgo energy is service. So it doesn't contain the ego confidence of Leo, which is the preceding sign. And it hasn't reached the social sphere of Libra yet. So it kind of sits in between these two signs. And if you're quite aware of the house system in astrology, you will know that houses 1 to 5 are very much about the self. Who I am, what I need, what I build. And these houses 1 to 5, they kind of end on Leo, where it's like the ego is if you think of it like an inflated balloon, all right? And so when it hits the Virgo archetype, the Virgo sign, it's like sticking a big pin in that balloon, okay? And the ego becomes deflated and humbled, right? And it starts to appreciate the benefit of hard work, of applying ourselves to something consistently, because it's very much about daily routine. What we must understand with any energy is that there is an evolutionary requirement. So for Virgo, as this intermediary archetype between self and others, there is an evolutionary requirement. And the requirement really, by design, is to teach hard work, to apply ourselves, to have self-critique, and to move towards self-improvement, to find work that is rewarding and meaningful. And generally that work will involve a strong sense of service to others, whether that be a small collective or a village or a town or a community, or whether it's much wider at a societal level. One of the third themes with Virgo is health, and I think this is the one that most people will be very aware of. So Virgo, even though it's an earth sign and it is associated with the mental function, it is to do with healthy routines that are both mental and physical as well. So a healthy mental routine is going to be very much about the way we think. Because they can be, because of this kind of humbleness and inferiority in Virgo, there can be kind of pushing ourselves down. So I'm not good at this. I messed up today. This I did terribly. I'm worthless. I shouldn't be doing it. I'm a terrible partner. I'm a terrible mother. I'm a terrible whatever it is. So there can be this really strong inner critical voice, this very negative steer that happens with Virgo. And it's absolutely vital to create a healthy voice instead. This mental function is very, very strong, and to create a healthy voice that takes that negative steer and kind of builds up onto a more balancing point of it. Bear in mind, it hasn't got to the balance of Libra just yet. It's learning. It's learning. Okay. And the only way we ever move through the archetypes, because we kind of do, is to start weaving in some of the themes, some of the energy of the next archetype. So here, Virgo, ego has dropped, gotta work hard, lots of, self-critique going on, a lot of mental chatter. It's got to start to bring in that little bit of balance, bringing it slightly more to positivity too. Right? And it kind of needs that because it needs it to work towards something which is really, really important with Virgo, and that is betterment. So it can analyze and critique, and then it will notice all these little anomalies and move it towards a state of betterment. So I just want to talk a little bit about health in more detail here and kind of the shadow side too. So on the positive side, we've got these thought patterns, these shifting these thought patterns from negative steer to more of a healthy, balanced viewpoint of self. We've got very much a focus on structured activities, mentally structuring, but also structuring our daily routines, whether that be by having a diary or having a journal, or, I put everything in my phone. I'm like, bam, I just have this list, this calendar now of all the things I have to do. It keeps me really, really on point, keeps my stress levels low. Because the shadow side of Virgo is it mentally overheats. It overanalyzes, it overcritiques, and it creates in the body a very, very high amount of cortisol if it's not controlled. Now, cortisol is the stress hormone in the body. Okay, and it's good that we have a little bit of stress. It keeps us on our tippy toes, keeps us surviving, but anything in its extreme is not good for the mind and is not good for the body. So what happens when we start to get stressed about something? Well, our routines become unhealthy. Okay, we don't get to sleep, we don't sleep properly, we don't eat properly. It affects the gut, right? Gut associated with Virgo, okay, throws out our systems. We don't mentally manage things, we don't manage our emotions properly, we become imbalanced. So it's really, really important with Virgo that we kind of tip that little bit towards really healthy routine, healthy mental routine, healthy physical routine, making sure we add to our schedules lots of healthy physical exercise. So as a Mars in Virgo myself, I know that I need to be very active. I need to be hugely active. And so I go to the gym 3 times a week. I do a long trek on a Sunday, and I do kind of mini little workouts too. So, if you have this energy too, maybe you know that you need to really kind of keep your body physically on the move, keep it physically fit, but do that consistently. Schedule in your week that you need to have that kind of physical element. Okay, and that physical element too is helpful in keeping down those cortisol levels. Just maybe be aware of doing it too much when you're winding down for the day. So I'm a real terrible person for exercise in the evening. No, we can't do that because it affects the sleep. So, if you, so I know I'm talking about what energy you have, and you might be thinking, oh, I actually don't know. If you do know, and you do have your own natal chart for the day you were born, brilliant. Okay. If you don't have one and you think, what is she talking about? You can head to my website, hearthorizongastrology.com. The links are below as well. Head up there on Create a Natal Chart, and you just need to put in your date of birth, your time of birth, and your place of birth, and it will generate a chart for you. Okay, and that is going to be really, really helpful for when you're reading any of my blog posts, or if you're listening to the podcast episodes. Okay, I want you to always have that with you when you're listening or when you're reading. So for those of you that do have your birth chart or know the planets that you have, right? Do you have any planets or point in the sign of Virgo? Where is Virgo in your chart? What house? Because we have a sign on the cusp, on the edge of each house. Which house has Virgo? Where is the planet Mercury, the ruler of Virgo? Can you see any connections between those planets you have in Virgo and any other planets? Can you see connections with your Mercury and other planets? Okay, all of this is going to give you a very strong picture of how Virgo you are. Right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about the shadow side of Virgo. So we've talked about health, and we've talked about service. Okay, let's talk about some of those other sides of Virgo, okay, to be very, very aware of. And so one of them which I did mention was this self-critique. So being that inner analytical nature of Mercury, Virgo is very detail driven, and it's excellent at investigation. It's brilliant at grabbing, huge amounts of data, analyzing the data, and figuring out where these anomalies are. And that's a wonderful gift that Virgo has, to have that sense of detail and not this broad sweep. Okay, what we have to be aware of is that these anomalies can be seen as faults or imperfection. Okay, and it can take on these faults and imperfections as I am faulty or I am imperfect in some way. So this can create a very negative sense of self. It can really build this view of inferiority, which we mentioned before. And yes, there is some absolutely required by design, but it can build a lot of stress in the body. And one big kind of shadow theme of Virgo is crisis. Crisis. Now, any of you that know your chart and know you've got a lot of Virgo, I am sure crisis is not a new word to you. And I myself told you I'm a Mars in Virgo, and last year I was in a very, very stressful situation for a number of years, and it hit the crisis point where I had a minor heart attack. Okay, there you go. There is the other side of Virgo, and it was awful. It was awful. But that crisis leads to a time of very inner, deep analysis, deep self-reflection. And that move towards that betterment and improvement that I mentioned before. Okay, so again, let's go back to requirement. No, it's not a nice way to move forward, but crisis forces us to stop. It forces us to stop. It forces us to analyze the situation, to discern what we want to do, what's important, and to move forward with it. Okay. Another big shadow with Virgo, which again I mentioned before, is stress and anxiety. So it has co-rulership over the nervous system. And the nervous system is your brain connected to the entire nervous system and the peripheral nerves, which move throughout the body. So the entire body can get affected when Virgo gets very, very stressed, very overheated, and reaches these very high levels of stress. Okay, and to all of you out there that know that you probably have quite a, I'm going to say nervous disposition. I don't want to brand you as being a nervous person, but you might kind of fall into the trap of getting very stressed and very nervous quite easily. to really watch out for how this impacts on your entire routine, from your sleep to your relationships with others, and to really how you approach events and activities in your life, because stress can have a huge impact. But please know that with Virgo, that betterment, really kind of tune into that, because there are so many ways that you can ease that stress in the body. Okay, and I think, you know, this high activity with Virgo, because it's such a restlessness when we're stressed out, we're nervous, when we're anxious, is to pull on the opposite of that, is to find things that calm. Okay, and I'm going to talk about this a little later on when I talk about rituals. Okay, so stay tuned for that. It's right at the end. So we've covered some of the kind of core elements of Virgo. We've covered some of the shadow elements of Virgo. So let's jump in to this new moon. And this new moon is not just a new moon. It is a partial solar eclipse. We are in eclipse season, right? And even more than that, it is at 29 degrees. And if you are there thinking, 29 degrees, so what? What does that mean? Well, 29 degrees, right? 29 is known as the anaretic degree. Okay, big fancy word for you. 29 is the last degree before the sign moves into a new sign. So this is right in the peripheral, this is right on the edge. And our understanding from this, from an energetic perspective, is that it will encapsulate the kind of entirety of the energy of that archetype. This is the extreme of Virgo. 29 Virgo, the extreme of Virgo. That's how I want you to think about it. So the fullness of the archetype is here. This is the second new moon in Virgo this month. That doesn't usually happen. So it's really kind of bringing in very strong Virgo themes here. So we're going to feel it double, and we're going to feel it intensely at that 29th degree. Okay, Virgo charged up to the extreme. So we got to watch those stress levels. We got to kind of keep note of this monkey mind and this overheating that happens, and, you know, ways that we kind of cut ourselves down a peg or two, right? Strive really for that betterment. Strive out better routines, better health plans, okay? So if you're feeling, you know, super critical, I want you to really kind of flip that switch here and say, hey, yeah, you know what, I've noticed some things that are not right. Yeah, you know what, I've got pretty critical of my body, my mind, or whatever is going on in your life. I'm going to use this Virgo energy to my betterment here, and I'm going to journal. I'm going to sit down for an hour and make notes. I'm going to carve out some kind of routine that will take me into a better space. I can turn this around, and I think that is the true gift of Virgo. Okay, guys, so we're going to look at the chart now for this new moon in Virgo, and you can see it there on the screen. And I know that some of you are probably quite comfortable and used to looking at charts, and others of you might not be. You might look at this and think, that is lots of crazy colors and lines. Yes, it is. But what I want you to do is I want you to kind of simplify it down in your head. So all those little glyphs on the outside, they're all the planets and points. And the numbers there are just the degrees, show us where they are. And all those colorful lines in the middle, well, that's just showing the connection between planets and points. So I would like for you to look down in that bottom section, slightly to the right, and you'll see the symbol there for the sun and the moon. And then to the right of it, that other symbol there looks like it's got ears. That's Mercury. And you can see they're all very close together. They're actually in a conjunction, with Mercury being in a different sign. It's in the next sign, which is the sign of Libra. So what happens here, and it's quite interesting that the ruler of this new moon is there too, because it gives it a greater role to play. And so we can really look at the ways that Mercury in Libra can support this new moon. how it plays into this theme. And so I just want to mention here some of the words associated with Libra. So we've got cooperation, balance, harmony, diplomacy, and partnership. So what do you think Mercury in Libra could do, considering all of those, for this new moon? What about balance? Virgo moving into that kind of negative bias, negative steer that it has, where it puts itself down, where it feels less or like there's a void or inferior in some way. Can we use the energy here of Libra to look at something more positive and bring it into a state of balance? Can we flip the switch on the negative? Can we use the idea of partnership and other? Can we involve others in this movement we have from figuring, through this period of self-analysis and self-critique, that something isn't right, something is an anomaly? Can other people help us move towards our state of betterment and self-improvement? Yes, we can. If we look at it from a mindset perspective, we can definitely work with a coach or a therapist that will help us and support us in changing our mindset. We can, from a physical perspective, maybe partner up with a gym buddy or somebody that we can play tennis or badminton or squash or another activity with. Can we talk? Can we, instead of keeping everything just in our mind, can we communicate with another, whether it's our romantic partner, or whether it's a family member or friend or someone we know that maybe has a bit more knowledge and skill in the area that we're looking to improve? Can we do that? Can we look at a harmonious new start? Remember, new moons are about planting seeds. They're not about a culmination like a full moon, they're a new moon. So this is the initiating point of something. So just keep those in mind. So we've got 3 quite considerable connections to this new moon. And I'm going to click on the new moon here, and you'll see that this chart will change slightly, and it's got rid of a lot of those messy lines in the middle, and we're left with a few. And the few lines we're left with are literally the connections between this new moon and other planets at that particular time. So I would like for you to look at, to your left, you'll see a blue line with a little triangle in it, and it leads up to a kind of a purple glyph that looks like it's got big antennas for ears. That's the planet Uranus. It's in the sign of Gemini, and that blue line with the triangle, well, that's a trine. So what that means is 120 degrees. That's a nice, easy, flowing aspect. So this new moon is going to have, very little challenge or obstacle connecting with Uranus in Gemini. So Uranus as an archetype is futuristic, it's a progressive time, it's always looking ahead, it's the visionary. It's associated with, it's cerebral, very similar to Virgo in that sense. It's extremely intellectual and smart energy. It's very involved with science and technology, and it would be known to be quite innovative and creative and radical. Uranus as an archetype is not scared to go it alone or be the leader. It's usually the kind of early adopter, if you know that phrase. So when something new comes out and other people are like, I'm not sure yet, just heard about it, I don't know, Uranus says, yeah, you know what, I visualize this as the future, I'm going to get in there quick. And I know other people aren't in with it yet, it's not mass yet, that's kind of the way Uranus likes it. So I want you just to have a think about Uranus as an energy and all of those terms, and then funnel that through into Gemini. And Gemini here is the outer masculine side of Mercury. So it actually works quite well with Virgo. So when we're looking at the outer masculine side of Gemini, we're looking at an energy that's kind of very involved with information, with data downloads, with gathering information. And it can do that by reading, it can do that by listening to podcasts, it can do that by watching videos, but it tends to do it really, really well in Gemini, being the social butterfly, by doing that with other people, by getting involved in different conversations, by stimulating conversations through curiosity. And Uranus is very much associated with the group, the network, the community. And so there might be something here about getting involved with a new community, a social community. It could be a team, actually, now I think about it. It could be a sports team, you know? Sports that focus on health and wellness. You know, linking it out here to Uranus, saying, yeah, let's do something new. Let's do something a little bit beyond our comfort zone. Let's get involved in this particular group and let's work towards this, you know, we've all got a common goal here. It can also be about an innovative therapy, perhaps. Gemini being communication. So where you've got the mindset involved with Virgo and thought patterns and shifting that mindset, what about a talking therapy? What about, you know, that art of communication? Something I looked at many years ago was using writing poetry as a way to ease trauma. There are suggestions from certain astrologers that Uranus can also represent trauma in the mind, associated with the long-term memories. So what we also have, if you keep looking at the screen there, you'll see there's a red line, and it's 180 degrees. It's directly opposite the new moon. We have two planets. One is Neptune, which is in the early degrees of Aries, and the other one it's in a conjunction with is Saturn, which is in Pisces. So this is a transit that's been happening quite a while in the background, and now it's kind of favored here. It's having a big influence during this new moon. So Saturn has a tendency to represent limitations, structures, boundaries, and borders. And when it's in the sign of Pisces, we tend to see those very fixed borders or boundaries might be not as fixed as they were before, because Neptune has a tendency to dissolve, to fade. And something that seemed to be absolute with Neptune is never quite absolute. You know, it rules illusions. So, you know, if we're looking at those two energies together, in consideration that this is an opposition, so these are two things that are almost opposing in some sense and could be pulling in two different directions. But the idea and the ideal place we want to get to with any opposition is to appreciate the differences between the two and to find that common middle ground between them. How can they work together? So how do we think this new moon in Virgo, there's a crisis, there's a problem, there's an anomaly, it needs to work towards a betterment and self-improvement. It's got Mercury there that's giving a little hand saying, look, you know, what about balance, what about diplomacy, what about partnership? And then opposite there, it's saying, well, all your structures, all your boundaries, hey, they're not as fixed as they were before. That can be really scary, that can be really destabilizing. But can we work that to our advantage, right? Can we take that slightly porous and flexibility there, and can we make some big changes right now? And we've got Neptune there in Aries. Neptune, Pisces, same energy. But in Aries, there's more of a focus on identity. So, you know, again, taking that Saturn, you know, dropping the boundaries, dropping some of that fixity, maybe allowing for a new identity to emerge or to develop. As I say, with Aries initiating, so there's the new. Or Aries also represents desires. Is there new desires that are coming in? Desires that we didn't see before? Or desires that we have had in the background but have kind of ignored. We've let them stay in the dark, stay in the shadows. So Neptune is quite an interesting energy for revealing hidden gifts. I know it was many years ago where I used to love to sing, and I actually thought I was quite a good singer. Whether I was or not, I don't know. But, in recent years, I started to sing in front of other people, and they actually said, "Oh, we never knew you were quite a good singer. Well, how did you keep that in the closet?" Neptune in the 12th. Yes, I did. So maybe there's a gift here that might be revealed if we allow those boundaries just to naturally drop and just work with that slight discomfort in that energy. Maybe this is going to be really helpful, really useful in working towards that point of self-improvement. And I just want to mention lastly that Pisces is quite a spiritual and manifesting energy. So it's things that work in the background that then become physical, physical being a Saturn term. And lastly there, I'd like you to look just to the right, and you'll see a red planet there, that's Pluto. Again, we've got the blue line with the triangle, so we've got the trine aspect coming in, that easy flow. Now, when it comes to Pluto, it's a slow-moving planet, so it's always going to have a bit of a hard hit. And the word that I naturally comes to mind with Pluto is death. And the thing is with death is that it can be something that we fear, the idea that something will disappear and never come back again. So there has to be a great deal of trust when it comes to anything that is impacts with Pluto. There has to be this, look, something is going to die, but whatever it is that is going to die is going to be something that has gone past its sell-by date. It's going to be something that you don't need anymore. It's the trash man. It's going to get rid of it, right? Allow you to plant these new seeds and bring in something new. So I like you to imagine something for me. Maybe close your eyes and imagine, right? I want you to imagine that you've got yourself a new house and you've moved in and you've unpacked everything, and that's great. And it's getting into the springtime and you want to look at the garden, and you look at the garden and those people there before, they had a design, but that's not your design. It doesn't work for you. And so you could try and work with it and fit whatever you want in there, but really that you need to go back to the beginning. You need to strip that all back. You need to kind of kill what's there already. And so you're going to dig and you're going to get rid of all the roots of everything in there. And then you're going to pop in brand new soil, and you've got this blank space. So the death of Pluto has happened. You've got this blank space. And then here is the gift of Pluto, is it generates, brings in something new. It is the death to birth. And so we've got this birth happening. And it gives you an opportunity to plant what you want to plant, for you to plan, for you to design, and for you to plant it as you want it, right? Perfectly, straight off. Pluto is in the sign of Aquarius. It's not too long moved into Aquarius, so it's still fairly new. And so we've got that combination of this death, birth, in a very progressive and future-focused sign, which is also highly scientific and highly technological. And we are seeing out in the world huge amount of changes in technology and intellectual side of technology, and I'm going to mention AI here, and robotics really coming in. And so we've kind of got a birth of robotics, a birth of AI coming in, which could be something that's quite helpful for you also in developing these new shifts in mindset, these new behaviors, this new daily routine to bring you to that point of self-improvement. And I think, I use AI in a lot of my work too. It's fantastic for doing some of that groundwork, for gathering information very quickly. So I just want you to think about, with that Pluto energy, what can I allow to die? How can I make space for the new? Could I bring in a new way of thinking? Could I bring in something progressive and beyond where I'm thinking now? Could I bring in a new health routine or activity? Can I work in with that Pluto, with that Uranus there, and maybe bring in something more socially and within the community, somewhere where there's a common goal? Okay, so I'm gonna end the part on the chart there, and I just want to leave you with two things. Number one is a few reflective questions, and I know I've scattered a few questions in there already, but these are a little bit more general around the new moon, just to think about. So here's the number one. Where am I being overly critical of my choices? Number two, what small specific habit could I refine to support my well-being? Number three, how can I manage efficiency and self-compassion at this time? Self-compassion being very much a Neptunian energy. And number four, which aspects of my life feel disordered? And what is one actionable step I can take right now? So I just want to end here on a few rituals which I do in my blog posts, just to be really, really supportive as the new moon is coming up. And these are all very Virgo themed, of course. So the first one here is journaling. And I know things have changed a lot. I still have a trusty notepad, but you may not. You may be a little bit more on the computer. And so it doesn't matter whether you use a physical notebook to scribble things, or whether you use a document online or notes in your phone. The important part here is that you begin to move disorder to order, crisis to a type of healing, to start to fix what's going on with you right now. So you can map out whatever you want. You can go from chaos to order, so you can just start writing without any major thought and see what happens. Or you can be a little bit more structured. Maybe you know that maybe physically you're not quite where you'd like to be, and you want to work on that as a goal. Maybe something else in your life is a little bit chaotic at the moment and needs some clarity and some structure and some order. And so you can use journaling, and you can use notes in a notebook or a digital notebook as a way of just starting to tease out some of those things that are on your mind. Get them out of your head, get them on to paper or on the screen. You can even take a psychological approach if you've got quite a negative steer right now and you're feeling very down in yourself, to maybe looking at the balancing point and the positives, because we often catastrophize situations depending on how we're looking at them, and a different frame of mind can bring up quite an opposing result. So wherever you are right now, let's see if we can pull in that Mercury in Libra. Maybe it's something you can do in your own private time, or maybe it's something somebody could help you with. I know my two best friends are absolutely amazing for when something's on my mind or I feel a little bit of a crisis. I send them a voice note, and they come back with lots of support, and they're both very different, so I get very different feedback, but it's super, super helpful for me involving them, because, you know, three heads is kind of going to give you a lot more than one. Another tool for you is meditation. And this is an interesting one, really, because Virgo, being so anxious, so linked to the nervous system, it tends to have quite a heated nervous system, quite a sensitive nervous system. So meditation is really nice for just maybe trying to calm and cool that down a little bit. And I would definitely recommend maybe 15-20 minutes before you get into bed, when you know, that nighttime routine, when you're shutting off the phone, shutting off the computer, turning off the TV, starting to wind down, getting your body and your mind ready for a restful night's sleep. Very, very Virgo here, healthy habits. And just kind of slipping into a meditation, and there's plenty out there of different pre-recorded meditations, all different types that you can use. just to see if you can calm the mind down. And some of them are actually very, very mindset focused with affirmations too, which I think are brilliant and I've used quite a bit. Another one is nourishment. And I put nourishment, which is a bit of a broad theme, because, we can nourish ourselves with really good food, and we can nourish ourselves with a lot of self-care. And again, we can link that to getting into particular daily routines where we just wake up with that word nourishment. How can I nourish myself today? What nourishing food can I put in my belly? What nourishing thoughts can I have? What nourishing habits can I bring in that really focus on my self-care, that really start to calm down my system, and work as a little bit of a conduit here to bring in that betterment, that new self, that new you. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here and listening to the first episode. You are amazing. I would love it so much if you would support the podcast if you really like what you listen to. Maybe leave me a comment or follow so you don't miss any more. We'll have another one in 2 weeks. Definitely get into a communication. Absolutely. You can leave a review too, because I'd love to know what you thought of today's episode. I'm very Virgo, so I'm happy to be improving too, to make sure it's, working for people. And I'm also on Instagram there too, so I've got the links all in the text below, so do take a look. We shall be back in 2 weeks' time, and thank you.